Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast for military and veterans. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, and provide value and solutions to help make life more abundant. Thanks so much for showing up to another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. Today's guest is Jasmine. She is married, 30 years old, and originally from Illinois. She served for 7 years in the U.S. Navy and left the Navy to pursue a career as a mental health counselor. Jasmine, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. Okay, well, I guess it started just in general, like mental health in the military. I know when I joined, I truly didn't really think too much about mental health as a concern. I joined when I was about 23 years old. But one thing like people don't realize sometimes joining is that the military can be like a very isolating place. You know, you're constantly moving different new places, constantly meeting new people. And I've always been extremely social. I never thought like I would feel isolated in the military. But one thing too is like usually every time I was in a class, a lot of times I was the only female. It was really hard making female friends, like really good female friends. A school, I had no problems. You know, it was huge. I was in Pensacola and there's like hundreds of people everywhere there. But when I went to C school, straight from A school, I was one of the only females. There was barely any Navy presence there. Um, Weight was always a struggle for me. So immediately I was put on FEP, which in Biloxi, when you're on FEP there and you're not a fleet returnee, like you're not allowed to have like liberty by yourself. Whereas like everyone else with you, they like get up to the point where they can just go wherever they want by themselves. And so I had no females there. I couldn't check out anywhere by myself. I didn't have a car, not that it mattered. The whole class I was with was all either Marines, fleet returnees, so they were higher ranking, and then it was just like me. And so I couldn't even sign out with anyone if I wanted to. So it was like for 5 months, it was just myself. And so that was always a struggle. That was like the biggest struggle I think I faced joining the first time that I felt like completely alone. Meeting the weight requirements, you know, looking back, looking at myself, like I definitely wasn't fat. Like I see how like the size I was even like in C school, and I feel like I was really tiny then. I wish I was what I am now. But like everyone's against you if you can't make weight. Honestly, like that's what it feels like. Like it's like being told that you have to lose weight and nobody's really rooting for you. They're all just like putting you down and making you feel bad for like not making weight. And I remember like I was really active. I loved running. I loved working out. So I actually stopped running to focus on weightlifting, like hoping that I could like slim down and make the like tape measurement requirements. And I remember getting measured and my waist had gotten smaller, but like my butt got big. So like no matter what, like I was not meeting the tape requirements and I couldn't seem to like lose weight. I think I was like 7 pounds over the weight limit. And I remember like just feeling like hopeless. Like I was like, wow, like I haven't even made it into the fleet yet. I'm already going to get kicked out. Even though I just ran like 8 miles and watched like everyone else stop because they couldn't run, you know, like it didn't even matter. Like all that mattered was like making tape. And, you know, you'll have like this person here. He was like, oh, it's a shame. I see it all the time. All these sailors, like, you know, this one guy was super fit, lots of muscles, but he got kicked out because he was too heavy and too bulky, you know. And I just feel like that whole journey, like in C school, was just like a foundation for like what I was going to experience like out when I left the fleet, you know. And I didn't stop there. You know, everywhere I went, weight was always a struggle. And, you know, they did come out with the abdomen circumference and I passed that. And that was like the one thing that saved me, because at that point, like right before that came out, I had already given up. And I was just like, this is it. Like, I'm like embarrassed that I'm going to get kicked out for being overweight. And going to my first command, you know, It was different environment for sure. But even there, like it was hard to make female friends. And again, I didn't have a roommate. That just like I was one of those weird people that like most of my time in the Navy, I didn't really have roommates. So it was so easy to be isolated. Like I tried to make female friends and I don't know if it was just like an age different. I always feel like I act like an old lady. So it is hard to make friends with people who want to just like party and drink all the time. And that wasn't me. And so I remember being like mostly isolated, like my first year too, at my first command. I did get back into running again, but it's like every time like the BCAs rolled around, it was just like a downward cycle again and again because I was always struggling to meet weight. And I even had my mentor at my first command. He was basically telling me that I was like hopeless and that I needed to plan on start getting out. Like which was like insane to me because like your mentor should always be that person that pushes you to be better and to strive for better. And getting out of the Navy was like the last thing on my mind. And I didn't pick this guy to be my mentor either. Like he was assigned to me. And I remember my supervisor like talking to me about it. And he was really upset. And he actually like was like, if you want to get out, then do that. He's like, but if you don't want to get out, like keep pushing, like you can do this. And even with that, like I was like motivated enough to pass BCAs once again, but it like really set me back like mentally. Like I just truly feel like, yeah, you get enough people to keep pushing you forward, but the vast majority of them are like just putting you down. And I feel like at the command I was at there, like that was such a big thing. It's like everyone wanted to keep pushing you down. Like I don't know if, that whole like, oh, tear you down to build you up. But me, and I find most people that I met in the military aren't like that. Like it's such a mental process when you have everyone against you for these certain things. Um, so I ended up staying in, but I ended up getting like extremely depressed. I remember like I stopped running, I stopped going to the gym, I just stayed in my room by myself for most of the time. Because even like males, like guys, like it was hard making guy friends because you never knew like who actually wanted to be your friend versus who just wanted to get in your pants. Like that was a huge thing. Like, so for the most part, I found myself like just confining myself to my room, which I had all to myself. And I remember thinking like, wow, like this isn't normal. Like I'm literally like unhappy, like I'm depressed, like I'm not doing the things that I love anymore. So I did go to a dietitian because I felt like I wasn't eating good. And I told her that I felt like my like weight loss journey was really mental. And I felt like that was really impacting me trying to like make weight. And she recommended me to mental health. So I went there and honestly, it was like a horrible experience. Like, you get in there and of course, one of the first questions they ask you is if you're contemplating suicide. And it's like, as soon as I said no, it was just kind of like, oh, well, then it's not that serious. Like that's seriously like what I felt like. The lady, I just felt like I came in there, she gave me like an inspirational quote. She never once tried to like dig into like the reason why I was here. It was basically like a pat on the head, like, you're doing good. Okay, see you next week. And I always felt like super rushed. Like she was basically just trying to get me out of it. Like that's really what it felt like. And I went to 2 sessions and just didn't go back. And I was like, wow, like I just need to do something. And so I tried, I think I found like a fitness class and I started doing that. I was just constantly searching for it. I finally found like a running partner that helped me a lot, like get my running time down, all that stuff. And then of course she moved. And that's like what it's like in the military. You find like one great person or a couple great people, but then in a couple months they're moving or you're moving. So it's this constant rotation of having to start all over again with the relationships that you make. um, so that was pretty much my first command. My second command, I remember I was really excited because I was shore duty first, and then I went to sea duty. So I worked with a squadron. I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna be super active. So this is gonna be great. Like I'm gonna lose weight. And that was just a huge I was so wrong because yeah, you're super, super active, but like people eat out like crazy, and that's all they wanted to do at the place. They would just want to eat out all the time. And you were so busy that you got like weird hours. You didn't have like a set lunch like how I did when I was shore duty. Um So you were constantly eating out different times, or you weren't eating at all. Like there were some days where I think I just had like 4 cups of coffee and that's like it. Or like people would like go to the Gidunk and just get tons of snacks for everyone in the shop. Or that's like the way the environment was. I think the first year I gained like 20 pounds, which of course was like depressing because it was like always my weight was always a thing in the military. And I think that was the first place that I started to like find like unhealthy ways to lose weight, especially like around the time that BCAs were coming around. And people like encouraged it too because a lot of people they're like struggled with their weight. So it was like I was always so big against that too. I was like, I'm never gonna use unhealthy practices to lose weight. Like because you hear about it all the time, like, oh, corsets and starvation and dehydration. And I was like, no, like I'm not doing that. But that's like what I had to do when I was in the squadron. I found myself like starving myself for days, dehydrating myself, like literally like not drinking like any water, going into a sauna, doing cardio, going back in the sauna, just so I could lose like 10 pounds in 3 days just to make weight. And that would like totally like mess me up. Like I remember for like weeks, I couldn't even eat right. Like my stomach hurt so bad from like those unhealthy practices. And it was like crazy to me. But between that and then like becoming a supervisor too, like my whole life became work, which was terrible, especially because I was married at the time. And I'm still married, but I was married, and it's just like the Navy just like took over my life. And it's just like no matter what, like you're never really off work. You're working 12 to 14 maybe hours. Then you have watches that aren't even on the same like schedule that you're on, so you're flip-flopping. Even when you're off work, people are messaging you, asking questions, and it's just like your whole mind is just like geared towards work. And I didn't want to be that person either. Like I've met so many people like leaders that just like really don't care about you. Like at the end of the day, they're just like, no, like I don't care. You hit them up when you're not at work, like because you need help with something, they don't respond. And I never wanted to be that person. Like I was like, I'm gonna take care of my sailors, I'm gonna take care of my people because I saw it all the time. Like I remember on deployment, this one girl, she found a therapist because she was really struggling with her mental health, and she actually really liked her therapist. And when she was getting sent on a detachment, she like had this complete breakdown, crying, like she didn't want to go. She was afraid to go. And I just remember the shop, like the supervisor in the shop, they were just like talking mad trash about her, like to everyone in the shop. And yeah, they didn't realize, but like I knew like there was people in there that were going through certain things that they were also seeing therapists for. They just were very quiet about it. And this other girl, she was very vocal about, what she was going through. And they were like, we don't need sad people in the military. She shouldn't even be here. And I just remember being so mad and telling them like that they should be ashamed of themselves, because I was like, there's other people in here that are struggling, like listening to you guys who are supposed to be the people that they can go to, and like talking such smack about her. And that's what makes people feel so alone too. Like you don't feel like you can always go to people with your concerns. That's really hard to find in the military too. Like mental health, for the most part, most of the times, unless you're lucky, isn't that beneficial. And the leaders, unfortunately, aren't always the best people to go to either. So you have to have like some person to find that you can like talk to about things, because then people just bottle stuff up and they start feeling like their problems are stupid. That's like literally what I felt like half the time was like my problems are stupid. Like I think I guess for the most part, I didn't really talk to anyone about anything. Like I kept a lot to myself. You have friends that you start to vent with. I've definitely seen a lot of people like go through serious things and not talk about it with leadership because they don't trust their leadership, which is huge. Like for the most part, I didn't trust a lot of my leadership too until like my last year in the Navy. I actually found some like really great leadership that actually tried to do something to make a difference. But most people I know like don't have that, which is so important. I remember, I think that's like a big thing too, not trusting leadership. I remember um, on deployment, there was a chief that like groped me, and I had my my own LPO and supervisors there that witnessed it. And I asked them why they didn't say anything, because I left like right after that happened, because I was like, what is happening right now? And they never said anything. They just like kind of looked the other way, like literally looked the other way. And when I asked them about that, they were like, oh, we didn't know if that's what you guys were like, which is crazy. I was like, because I felt like I'd never given the impression that I was ever like that. And it was with a chief that I never talked to. Like, even though he was actually my shop chief, I never talked to him. And they had a chief make him like apologize to me. And then the next day, what do you know? He was doing it again to some other junior sailor, So to me, that was like the foundation at that place, that like no matter what you say, like they're going to have each other's backs over yours. And it's like crazy to me, because when I left, when I was like leaving, like literally my last week in the command, like I remember even like reporting something I saw where a supervisor was using, the recall to get like junior sailors' phone numbers so he could like text them up and try to get them to hang out with him. He made a comment to another female that he would like rape her if he could get away with it. And I ended up reporting him. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I jumped like the whole chain of command and reported him to like the CMC, because I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, and the women at first like didn't want to come forward, so I couldn't give their names. But I reported him and was like, this is like predatory behavior, and you guys like need to do something about it. And luckily, one of the females decided to step up. So then another female stepped up, and they actually ended up investigating him. Of course, I got out, but like they actually took steps to get him out of the shop that he was in. And I know he went up to captain's mast, and I'm not sure the outcome of that, but like it was really sad that that's like the first time, like 7 years, that was my first time seeing something like actually done about a situation like that, and saying that, like, that's why so many people, they feel like they can't report their problems. They can't talk about their problems, because for the most part, people are like, suck it up. Like, that's what you learn. I feel like for the most part, you need to like suck it up, which sucks, because, some people like, yeah, they can suck it up for a long time, but it's going to eat you up. It's going to get to you, like either in your personal life or just down the line in your military career, because you need some sort of balance. You need an outlet. And unfortunately, mental health, yeah, they're trying to push for more and more, because, we are losing a lot of people to suicide. So like we have to do something. And it's really hard though, because you're training us one way daily, and then you're like, oh, but come talk to me if you need something. But it's like that whole, like, as a leader, you're trained to act a certain way, but you have to like actually follow through with that, like, I guess, practice what you preach, and you can't teach people to care. I guess that's the main thing. I'm sure there's a lot more. I do feel fortunate, because obviously in the beginning I did struggle a lot to find. I feel like I really needed like good female role models, because I've always had some in my life. And it took me a while to find like a good female foundation. I do stress that like female, because the military is still very heavily male dominant, and not saying that you can't, become, I have really great friends that are males, but I do feel like a female presence is really important, because like I always had a female in the command, especially when I was a leadership position. Like I constantly went to her like, hey, am I overreacting? Because like I know I can overreact, and a lot of women don't have that. And it's like really sad. I find that very sad, because I feel like everyone needs that person that they can go to, and I feel like females specifically like need a female to look up to in the military, because it's really hard to be a female in the military.
No, I 100% agree with you. And I know I personally can relate to so many things in your story with isolation and the weight regulations in the military. And I think we could probably talk for hours just about those things alone. But if there isn't anything else that you wanted to share with your story, I just had a couple other questions for you in closing.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. So the first one, and I think you might have answered this already, but I'm going to ask again, just in case your answer is different. But do you feel your experience was more positive or more negative when it comes to mental health?
I mean, it's like, it feels positive, but honestly, I truly feel like the military, like especially towards the end, like getting out was one of the best things I could have done for my mental health. And I mean, being in is what made me want to be a mental health counselor. So that's like the positive thing. I do feel like while I was in, like what I learned helped me help people that were struggling with mental health in the service. But it weighed on me very heavily. But I'm very empathetic person. Like I take like other people's, feelings. I feel them too. But I just feel like it really heavily weighed on me. And I didn't really feel like if I didn't have those close relationships that I ended up finding, like I don't even know. Like I feel like I would have struggled a lot more.
Is there anything that you think would have made things better for you?
Truthfully, I think it's just I hate to see like, oh, like people care more because like I said before, you can't like make people care. But I think that if people were more conscious of the fact that like taking that time, which I did have, like especially in my last command, but people just really taking the time, like, are you really okay? Because we know when people aren't okay. It's you're with these people, especially like I was with these people more than I've spent with anybody else these last 7 years, especially when I was in the squadron. And you can like tell when people are going through things. And I know people get scared, they don't want to step on toes or like be too invasive, but honestly, like people like need to step on toes because most people aren't willing to just come out and be like, no, like I'm really struggling here. Like I don't know how I'm going to make it through the week. People get like off put by that. And I think people just need to risk someone getting mad at them and speaking up to them, versus just they'll be fine, you know.
No, I totally agree there. Final question for you. If you were in charge of the Navy, what would you do to make mental health better overall?
Honestly, like I mean, and I always encourage people to do this too, is find something outside of the military, like as an outlet. They always say exercise, which I get it. Like obviously exercise is very helpful. But like the biggest thing I think that really helped me, I guess, like now that I think about it, is that I found a community outside of the military. And that really helped stabilize me, keeping like one foot on each side. And I feel like that's so important to like know that you have an identity outside the military. Like, yeah, you're a sailor 24/7. Like they say that all the time. But like you are still a person. Like you have things that like if the military was to be like, hey, we don't need you anymore for some reason or another, that you still had an identity outside of that. And I feel like so many people don't have that.
Absolutely. I think identity is such an important factor too, and something that's not really talked about. But thank you so much, Jasmine, for sharing your story and sharing value with everyone today. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to future episodes with you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen in today. Each week, I'll be bringing you value in the mental health space and its direct impact on service members and veterans. If you feel you personally got value today from this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a 5-star rating and review and share this to your audience. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.